The scene shifts to a quiet workspace where a smartphone lies flat on a desk next to a spiral notebook filled with dense text. The silence is suddenly shattered by a physical vibration, buzz, as the device rattles against the table. The glow of the screen at 5:20 indicates an interruption at a time meant for focus or rest, signaling that the outside world is refusing to let her character move on. Despite her efforts to ignore the contact, the notifications do not stop. A close-up of a system alert reveals a text message from a hidden or unsaved number, 010 XXXX XXXX XXXX. The simple, cold notification, "You have a message," hangs in the void, suggesting that her former partner may be attempting to bypass her boundaries by using a different identity or number. A woman with long, wavy, reddish-brown hair stares down at her phone with a sharp, visible glare. Her expression is one of deep annoyance and weariness as she sees a familiar name appearing on her screen yet again. The thought bubble above her head confirms her frustration with a single exhausted realization. Dong-sung again. The final scene focuses on the woman clutching her phone tightly against her chest, her body language tense and defensive. She is dressed in a simple tan wrap top, but her mind is far from calm. Looking down at the device that has become a source of constant stress, she can only think of one thing regarding his behavior. He's so relentless. The cycle of harassment continues, proving that a breakup was not enough to stop his pursuit. The story begins with a heavy realization shrouded in darkness. The character reflects on a decisive moment that should have been an end, but instead became a haunting memory. "Last night, I broke up with Dong-sung right away." The jagged, static-filled background mirrors the internal turmoil and the sharp, painful nature of the separation. The story begins with a moment of quiet introspection. A man with sharp, refined features stands against the backdrop of a fading twilight sky. His expression is unreadable, bordering on cold. Above him, a narration box reveals the internal struggle of the protagonist. "I thought I saw a glimmer of hope in Yeon-yuk." This suggests a past desire for connection or a solution that ultimately failed to materialize. He asks dismissively, "Is that all you have to say?" setting a tense tone for the encounter. The perspective shifts to a close-up of the man's attire, a sophisticated, textured gray suit. His hand is thrust casually into his pocket, signaling a lack of emotional investment, or perhaps a desire to maintain a stoic facade. He concludes the conversation with a cold finality, stating, "Then let's end things here for today." His body language suggests he is already mentally checking out of the situation. Text panels against a dark background provide a deeper look into the protagonist's motives. The internal monologue explains that a long-held strategy has reached a dead end. "In the end, I never got a clear answer." Because the primary goal, a plan for revenge, has fizzled out, the protagonist realizes there is no longer any strategic or personal benefit in maintaining their current relationship. The decision is made. There is no reason to delay the inevitable breakup any longer. The scene shifts to a sidewalk where two figures stand close together. We see the lower half of a man in tan trousers and the legs of a woman wearing elegant black high-heeled pumps with ankle straps. The tension is palpable in the small space between them. A speech bubble breaks the silence with a life-altering declaration. "Dong-sung, let's call off the engagement." The formal use of his name, combined with the heavy request, marks the official end of their shared future. In the final scene, the woman, So-young, turns her back on Dong-sung, her long auburn hair flowing as she walks away. Her eyes are closed, showing a mixture of exhaustion and resolve. Dong-sung is left standing behind her, visibly shaken and breaking into a sweat. He reaches out a hand as if to stop her, stammering, "Wait, So-young." But her mind is made up. Over her shoulder, her final words are polite but distant. "I wish you all the best." As So-young attempts to walk away, the silence of the evening is shattered by a sudden, forceful movement. A hand reaches out with urgency, firmly grabbing her wrist to halt her departure. The motion is captured in a blur, emphasizing the man's desperation to keep her from leaving the conversation and his life. Shocked by the suddenness of her decision, the man peers down at her with a look of frantic confusion. His face is pale, and a bead of sweat rolls down his temple as he struggles to process her words. He stammers out a question, his voice trembling with disbelief. "Why so out of the blue, So-young?" He searches her face for any sign that this is just a misunderstanding, but the sunset glow only highlights the growing distance between them. Despite his physical hold on her, So-young does not waver. She stands tall, her long auburn hair cascading over her shoulders, but her expression remains cold and detached. She looks back at him over her shoulder with an icy glare that suggests her mind is firmly made up. The physical grab that once might have felt like protection now feels like an unwelcome tether as she prepares to sever their final tie. Trying to find a logical excuse for her sudden coldness, the man forces a nervous, shaky smile. He tries to rationalize her behavior by blaming external pressures rather than their relationship. He asks tentatively, "Has work been a lot lately? Are you worn out?" It is a desperate attempt to frame her desire for a breakup as a temporary symptom of exhaustion rather than a permanent choice. In a final, frantic bid to salvage their engagement, he resorts to promises of change and future happiness. His voice drops as he offers a rare moment of self-reflection, admitting, "I haven't been taking good care of you, have I?" Without waiting for an answer, he quickly follows up with a bribe of time and affection. "Once things settle down, let's go on a trip, okay?" It is a classic too little too late gesture offered to a woman who has already mentally left his side. The scene opens with a tense close-up of So-young. Her expression is solemn, her brows slightly furrowed with a mix of sadness and absolute resolve. She looks directly at the man before her and speaks with a heavy heart. "Dong-sung, I'm not saying this lightly. I really mean it." The weight of her words hangs in the air, signaling that what she is about to say is not a temporary emotional outburst, but a final decision. The tension reaches its peak as So-young delivers the crushing blow. "Let's break up." As she speaks, there is a sharp physical disconnection. The image shows a snatch effect as her hand pulls away from his, breaking the physical bond they once shared. The red text of her dialogue emphasizes the finality and the pain of the severance. Dong-sung is left standing in the fading glow of the sunset, his face a mask of shock and disbelief. He looks completely blank, unable to process the sudden end of their relationship. So-young doesn't linger to watch his reaction. She simply offers a cold, final goodbye as she begins to turn her back on him and their shared past. Without another word, So-young walks past him. The camera focuses on the physical distance growing between them. Dong-sung reaches out a hand instinctively, as if to grab the air she just occupied, but he remains frozen in place. The blurred background and the focus on So-young's retreating figure highlight the emotional wall she has built between them. The scene shifts to the aftermath, late into the night. Against a dark, starry background, the silence is broken by the persistent ding of phone notifications. It is 9:10 p.m., and Dong-sung is desperately trying to reach her. His messages read, "So-young, pick up," followed by a heartbreaking plea. "So-young, we can't break up like this." He is struggling to accept the reality that she has already moved on. The silence of the night is shattered by the constant buzzing of So-young's phone. Despite her clear rejection, Dong-sung refuses to let go, sending desperate messages like, "I'm sorry, So-young, I'll be better." When he realizes he has been blocked or ignored, he begins a relentless cycle of changing his phone number over and over again just to force his way back into her digital life. The harassment escalates as a new notification appears from an unknown number. Even though it is flagged as a blocked message, the content is visible and reveals a darker turn in Dong-song's behavior. After 10 missed attempts from various numbers, he sends a sharp, accusatory text. "So-young, are you seeing someone else?" His desperation has shifted from apologies to unfounded jealousy and suspicion. In the privacy of her home, So-young is visibly drained by the ongoing ordeal. She lets out a heavy sigh, leaning her head against her hand as she processed the audacity of his latest message. Looking at the phone with a mixture of fatigue and contempt, she thinks to herself, "That's rich coming from you." It is clear that his accusations of infidelity are hypocritical, likely reflecting his own past actions rather than her reality. So-young decides that enough is enough. Instead of engaging with the toxic cycle or defending herself against his out-of-line accusations, she puts her phone face down on the table. This physical act symbolizes her attempt to shut out the noise and reclaim her peace. She is choosing to walk away from the digital ghost of her ex-boyfriend, refusing to give his insecurity any more of her energy. The narrative concludes with So-young's internal reflection on the situation. She characterizes the entire experience as a string of pathetic texts. For her, the relationship didn't just end with a conversation, it died through his inability to respect her boundaries. By sending messages that were out of line, Dong-song only succeeded in turning her lingering sadness into complete and utter loss of respect. As she places her hand firmly on the device with a soft pat, she muses with frustration. You'd think he'd give up by now. She is baffled by his inability to recognize that his constant intrusion is only driving her further away. Despite her efforts to ignore him, the phone begins to vibrate violently on the table with a loud buzz. An incoming call from another unassigned number, the same 010 prefix, lights up the screen. Her finger hovers near the decline button as the digital harassment transforms into a physical intrusion of her quiet evening. The camera zooms in on So-young's face, catching the moment she comes to a halt as she sees the screen. Her expression is one of pure exasperation. It's that number again, she thinks, her patience completely evaporated. She is truly sick and tired of this never-ending cycle of digital stalking. The intensity of the situation is represented by a frantic series of buzz sound effects scattered across a distorted, static-filled background. This visualizes the overwhelming noise and pressure Dong-song is creating, turning her phone from a tool of communication into a source of constant anxiety. The scene concludes with a firm internal declaration amidst the persistent buzzing of the phone. Surrounded by the dark, heavy atmosphere of the night, So-young's resolve remains unbroken. Her final thought is a clear, cold boundary. I told you, I have nothing more to say to you. The scene begins with a surge of intense emotion. The woman, her face contorted with anger and a visible anger symbol on her temple, yells into her smartphone. She is at her breaking point, her voice sharp as she shouts, "I don't want to see you." The background is filled with dramatic speed lines, emphasizing the volume and force of her rejection. Continuing her heated tirade, she becomes even more direct. She demands to know why the person on the other end is being so clingy despite her previous refusals. With cold, unwavering honesty, she makes it clear that her distance isn't due to a busy schedule or external circumstances. It is personal. She bluntly states, "I just don't like you," while a close-up shows a hand clenched into a tight fist, signifying her inner tension and resolve. The camera pulls back to a high-angle shot, showing her small figure seated at a desk in a large, lonely room. Above her, a massive, jagged speech bubble dominates the frame like a physical weight. The text screams in bold, red-tinted letters, "Don't ever contact me again." This is the final bridge being burned, leaving no room for negotiation or apology. Following the explosion of words, a sudden, suffocating silence fills the air. The woman remains holding the phone to her ear, but her expression has shifted from outward rage to a mix of anxiety and expectation. The shout sound effect has been replaced by a chilling silent. She waits, her eyes narrowed, as the speech bubble from the other end remains empty, containing only an ellipsis. The focus shifts to a tight close-up of her lower half of her face and the phone. The aggressive energy of the previous moments has evaporated, leaving behind a lingering unease. Beads of sweat begin to form on her skin. Despite having just told him to never call again, she finds herself unsettled by the lack of a response, thinking to herself with growing concern, why isn't he saying anything?